because I often think to be an artist, right, you kind of almost need a almost delusional self-belief, and you've got to look at all the gatekeepers and go, well, who cares about them, and I need to do this. What would you say to anybody who maybe has something but they're questioning that, and how do you navigate that?
You just got to do it. Get it out of your head and get it down. If you've got an idea, it might sound simplistic, but write it down. And there are parts that will flow, and there are parts that will just plod and you'll really struggle with. But it's work at the end of the day. Anyone that sort of sits there waiting for the muse to sit on their shoulder and it all flows, they're going to be waiting quite some time. And one of the things that I always encourage people to do is just to get it down. I mean, what helped me quite often is writing the first draft by hand, because you're using a slightly different part of your brain. And I can get it scribbled down and then I kind of type it up afterwards. And when I have my school visits, kind of what I talk about, as somebody once said, it's like, write the first draft like a dog and edit like a cat. And I totally understand what they mean, because when I'm getting the first draft down and my tail's wagging and I'm just getting out of my head and onto the page, but then when you edit and rework it, it's slightly more cat-like and you're thinking a little bit and analysing more. But you've got to get it down. And I think one of the things that struck me when I was writing, certainly the first book, there were moments that I really did struggle with, or reading back, I was thinking, oh, this is rubbish, this particular section. But it's going to be, because that's your first draft. And that's what the redraft and the polishing is. And you work with an editor so that when your book finally comes out, you don't know the parts that flowed and the parts you struggle with, because it's all as good as it can be. So I suppose that's one of the things that I would always encourage people to not expect to write something that would be what you end up publishing on the page, because nobody does that. Not even Dickens did that. You have to rework it. You need to then redraft it. And I enjoy that phase of it personally. But I also enjoy going out and finding your own readers, because I think one of the challenges with traditional publishing and that kind of gatekeeping is lots of books or book ideas get lost, not because they're bad books, but just because they don't fit the marketing of traditional publishing. I was at an indie author conference, and there was a traditionally published author who had been successful with her thrillers, and she wanted to write lesbian romances with a happy ending. And she was told by her agent and her publishing company, well, nobody wants to read that. There's not really a market for lesbian romances with happy endings. I'm pretty sure there is. And so she indie published that series, and it became her most successful series.
Right, yeah.
But because you can go out and you could find your readers directly, you don't have to go through that traditional published route. There are options. Now, what's interesting is that you've often now got indie authors being approached by trad publishing houses, and they want to then work with them or republish some of their back catalogue. Whereas it used to be, if you've indie published, there's no chance that a traditionally published company would look at your work. But now traditional publishing is looking for dead certs. That's one of the reasons why you've got so many celebrities and names that they assume will come with a following and therefore with a certain amount of sales. But if you've got publishers that are looking at indie authors who have sold many thousands of books and have got strong followings, they're getting the same thing. And so they're starting to get less snobbish about it, and a little bit more receptive to the idea of, and from an author point of view, being a hybrid author. So perhaps a particular series idea you can work with traditional publishing. But again, sometimes that doesn't fit. There was a podcast with an indie author who was talking about how she's had quite a lot of success with one particular series, and that she was in conversations, quite extended conversations with traditional publishers about putting it out there, and they wanted to, instead of, I think, over 6 books, they wanted to make it over 4. So they wanted her to kind of cut chunks out. She said, but then it won't make sense. And, this definitely works because I've got extensive sales to prove it. But because they had a rigid idea of how they wanted to do it,
Yeah.
the talks came to an end. And I think that's still one of the challenges with traditional publishing, is that they have a particular way of doing things and they aren't massively flexible. But for me, one of the things I've loved is engaging with local bookshops as well. So Bookseller Crow on the Hill are such a wonderful bunch, and they've always been hugely supportive. I'm really proud. The Star of Nimrod is their best-selling title, and Kirkdale Bookshops and Dulwich Books and Beckenham Books. Those are places that have always been supportive of not just me but other local authors as well. So I think having that local foundation has been something that has meant a lot to me.